if I be a prophet of God, let that money appear now.
He sounded like a godly person to you.
He did. I mean, he's quoted scriptures.
The teachings that I've shared in times past on the subject of tithing were not correct.
They claimed to be servants of God, but built global empires, starred in reality shows, hosted stadium-sized events, and chased fame like Hollywood stars. Behind the scenes, affairs, cover-ups, and power plays that destroyed lives. From one pastor using his pulpit to run a billion-dollar fraud, to another who became a reality TV icon while cheating on his wife. These are times black pastors lied about God for fame. By the end of this video, you'll question everything you thought you knew about megachurches. Number 9. Ephraim Taylor.
He sounded like a godly person to you.
He did. I mean, he's quoted scriptures.
Ephraim Taylor prides himself as a social capitalist, but we're about to uncover the full story of this man that only a few know about. Remember earlier in this video where we talked about Eddie Long defrauding his congregation? This was his accomplice. Taylor ran something called City Capital Corporation and went on these building wealth tours across the country. But it was a $16 million Ponzi scheme, and he figured out the perfect hunting ground: churches. The man went from church to church, presenting himself as a godly man who could multiply their investments through faith-based opportunities. All these were to deceive families who scraped together their life savings and handed them to him with the hope of having a better life. When the feds eventually caught up with him in 2015, they had him nailed with a 20-year prison sentence, plus $15 million in restitution. The prosecutors called it what it was: criminal behavior disguised under a false gospel veneer. But the craziest part of this saga is, Taylor wasn't just a fraud. He weaponized the idea of faith itself, convincing gullible people that investing with him was somehow part of God's plan for their prosperity. Entire families lost everything: retirement funds, kids' college money, savings built over decades, all because they believed Taylor when he said God wanted them to be wealthy. Well, of course, not every wealthy pastor is running a Ponzi scheme, but these controversies are just about to get worse. Number 8. Lamore Whitehead. When the emphasis is on luxury rather than the gospel, things can get a bit messy, as with Pastor Lamore Whitehead, popularly known as Pastor Bling Bling. This Brooklyn pastor basically turned his church into a display for his luxury lifestyle, and there was everything wrong with it. Every Sunday, Whitehead would walk into church in designer suits, dashing Louis Vuitton accessories and flashy Rolexes, streaming it all live for his congregation. The man treated church services like his personal fashion show, complete with exotic cars parked outside his 9,000-square-foot mansion in New Jersey that cost him $1.4 million. Well, here's where it got really messy. Whitehead got robbed at gunpoint by masked men during a live-streamed sermon, on camera, in front of everyone. He had his $1 million worth of jewelry stripped off him while he lay helplessly on the ground. You thought he would learn from that incident, but that wasn't the end of him lavishly flaunting his wealth. He was also rubbing shoulders with big names New York Mayor Eric Adams, attending more high-profile events than church meetings, the whole celebrity pastor routine. Then, 2024, his fraudulent lifestyle got exposed. The pastor was accused of stealing $90,000 from his own congregation. Now we know where all the flashy luxury came from. He was convicted and slapped with 9 years behind bars for wire fraud, attempted extortion, and making false statements to federal law enforcement agents. Whitehead was a perfect instance of a fall from grace, but if you think American prosperity preachers are over the top, wait until you hear about this Nigerian pastor. Number 7. John Gray. A charismatic pastor who has written best-selling books and starred on OWN's reality show. But scratch beneath that polished surface and you'll find an entirely different reality. With a net worth of $14 million, Gray built his widespread fame through media appearances and his role as an associate pastor in Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Lakewood, Texas. And after winning the hearts of hundreds of thousands of people with his charismatic personality, he decided to go solo by founding the Relentless Church. And this was when the scrutiny started pouring in. The first media explosion was in 2018 when he bought a $200 Lamborghini Urus for his wife as an 8th wedding anniversary present.
Video surfaced this week of the pastor presenting the card to his wife in celebration of their 8-year wedding anniversary.
The backlash that followed was huge after the video went viral. This has left people convinced that he had splashed his church's resources on his wife. But this was only the start of an even bigger controversy. In 2019, his church gifted him a $1.8 million mansion to make their pastor live more comfortably. Yes, as you must have suspected, this was out of the church's treasury, contributed by people who still struggle to pay rent. While this was still fresh news, allegations started pouring in on repeated accusations of infidelity, including affairs with a masseuse. In 2020, Gray publicly apologized to his wife, and then again in 2025. You see, when someone has to apologize multiple times for the same behavior, it begs the question of whether it was genuine repentance or just for the public's reactions. Then following that were claims of blackmail and extortion attempts in a bid to keep these alleged affairs under the carpet. One thing is crystal clear: pastors like John Gray would go to any length to keep their fame growing, and that's what he did. But maybe we haven't heard the worst yet, because this next preacher took his lies a step further. Number 6. Hubert Angel.
If I be a prophet of God, let that money appear now.
There are so many unanswered questions on this man's ministry, and we will clarify them one after the other. Hubert Angel might look like a successful British Zimbabwean preacher leading Spirit Embassy ministries. Plus, he's also Zimbabwe's presidential envoy to Europe and the Americas. But this position probably gave him diplomatic immunity to commit crimes on an international scale. When it comes to wealth, Angel racked up a $60 million worth of assets from his multi-billion-dollar business empire, his book sales and merchandise, and of course, his ministry. But down the line, his fame took a dark, unexpected turn. Angel became the central figure in Al Jazeera's explosive Gold Mafia documentary, where he was caught on camera allegedly offering diplomatic cover to launder over $1 billion through gold smuggling operations. Think about that number, $1 billion in dirty money, all facilitated by a man who claims to speak for God. This so-called man of God publicly boasted that he could move $1.2 billion easily. Specifically because of his diplomatic immunity, you could see that this man was someone drunk on power and convinced that not even the authorities had any influence over him. Well, Zimbabwe's financial intelligence unit didn't see it that way. They immediately froze his assets, and arrests were already looming over money laundering allegations that could destroy not just his ministry, but also his reputation. Yet, Angel couldn't stop portraying himself as a prophet he believed himself to be. Despite the mounting scandals flying around, Angel still maintained his high-profile ministry and his business empires, and probably got more famous through the scandal stories. But international money laundering isn't the darkest secret yet. Number 5. Eddie Long. Eddie Long's story is one of the most tragic betrayals of trust in modern church history. The American pastor took New Birth Missionary Baptist Church from roughly 300 congregants to 25,000 members, which was a pretty huge feat for him and his church. But like most preachers who needed to emotionally manipulate their audience to buy their hearts, Long preached the prosperity gospel while giving off the vibe of a successful megachurch pastor. He flew in private jets, drove a Bentley worth $350,000, plus a net worth of over $5 million, which was mainly acquired from his ministry. That alone tells you the kind of church he runs. Well, his congregation trusted him not just with their spiritual lives, but with their children, and that was when the ugly side of him eventually got exposed. So what really happened exactly? In 2010, 4 young men filed lawsuits against Long, accusing him of forced sexual relationships.
And I cannot forget the smell of his cologne. And I cannot forget the way that he made me cry many nights when I drove in his cars on the way home, not able to take enough showers to wipe the smell of him off of my body.
These strong allegations painted really disturbing pictures of a predator using his position of spiritual authority to manipulate vulnerable young people. What better way could you describe a wolf in sheep's clothing? But that wasn't the entire story. The alleged victims described a pattern of gifts like flashy cars, jewelry, and exotic vacations, all purchased with church funds. And the scary part is, some of his leaders were fully aware of these terrifying truths, but said nothing about it. The point is, Long was allegedly deep into sodomy with the very young people his ministry was supposed to protect. Of course, Long publicly denied the entire story, but would rather settle the cases out of court rather than face trial. The settlements were paid in millions, and Long resigned to mediate the agreements, but the damage to his reputation was already permanent and irreversible. He even had a record of defrauding his members in a Ponzi investment scheme that left most of them with unrecoverable debts. After Long died of cancer in 2017, survivors and critics continued condemning how his faith platform had masked systematic abuse. His lies about spiritual integrity were completely intertwined with the wealth he preached and the power he wielded over vulnerable people. But even wealthy African pastors are not left out of this extreme corruption in their churches, just like this next pastor. Number 4. Shepherd Bushiri. If by now you still believe that pastors don't build their wealth from scams, then this one will definitely convince you. Prophet Shepherd Bushiri, also known as Major One, is unarguably one of the wealthiest religious leaders in Africa and is considered the richest man in South Africa. He leads the congregation of Jesus Nation Church, large enough to fill an entire stadium. But let's get more practical. This preacher man owns a $150 million net worth and a business portfolio that would make Wall Street jealous. Forex trading, real estate, and even airlines. All funded through his Shepherd Bushiri investments. Wonder where that seed money came from? But forget the business empire for a second. This man owns not 1 or 2, but 3 private jets. The newest one cost him $37 million. I mean, while his congregation could barely commute to church, Major One preferred flying first class, or should I say private class. His car collection is even more absolutely insane. Rolls-Royce Black Badge, Bentley Bentayga, and that ridiculous Aston Martin worth nearly $2 million. Every time he stepped out, it felt like watching a luxury car commercial, which was way too glamorous for a man who's meant to represent the gospel. But it didn't take long before the law caught up. South Africa hit him with fraud and money laundering charges, and suddenly, multiple countries have him wanted. The National Prosecuting Authority of South Africa seized one of his jets, as authorities allege it was purchased with illicit funds. Now, they have been authorized to sell the $28 million private jet as part of a fraud and money laundering investigation. People started asking uncomfortable questions about his wealth, and he simply got defensive, calling everyone jealous and xenophobic. But here's the even scarier part.
No, there's nothing like that. People get, the gospel for free. The gospel is for free.
When his back was against the wall, Bushiri plainly admitted that he came to South Africa to make money. That speaks for itself as to why he became a pastor in the first place. Number 3. T.D. Jakes. Everyone knows that name, and to be honest, T.D. Jakes stands as one of the most recognized evangelical figures globally, with his name standing tall for decades now. As founder of the Potter's House in Dallas, Jakes transformed TDJ Enterprises into a media and events empire generating nearly $400 million in revenue since the mid-1990s. Several best-selling books to his name, movies, conferences, you name it. He has been featured everywhere. Time magazine covers, PBS calling him one of the top 10 religious leaders in the world, Grammy Awards, NAACP honors. His MegaFest events would pack stadiums with tens of thousands of people, and he'd charge as much as $150,000 just to show up and speak for a day. That's some serious influence. Then November 2024 happened. Former pastor Dwayne Youngblood came forward with sexual assault allegations, claiming Jakes assaulted him when he was a teenager. Just like that, decades of a carefully built reputation started cracking. But Jakes wasn't letting it go without a fight. He filed a defamation lawsuit, called it all lies and extortion, and pointed to Youngblood's criminal history. But you could see the pressure getting to him. The man literally collapsed during a sermon in his church at the Potter's House. His lawyers said it was from the emotional stress of dealing with these accusations, but that wasn't even the end of it. Rumors started flying about Jakes being at Diddy's parties. You know, those freak-off parties that had Diddy charged with several counts of sexual abuse. As expected, Jakes denied all of them as false claims sponsored by disinformation campaigns for spreading lies about inappropriate behavior. By April 2025, Jakes stepped down and handed everything over to his daughter, Sarah Jakes Roberts. His team called it planned succession, but we all know what was going on. The timing says it all. This was a spiritual leader, but somewhere along the way, it became all about the brand, the fame, the empire. When that becomes more important than actual integrity, things fall apart faster than you can imagine. But if you think big-name scandals are wild, wait until you see what happened with this next pastor. Number 2, Creflo Dollar. His last seemed to speak for itself, but when most people hear the name Creflo Dollar, they think of a man blessed by God with unimaginable wealth. But is that really who he is, or is there way more to it than meets the eye? Dollar controls World Changers Church International like a CEO running a Fortune 500 company. We're talking about gross revenue over $70 million annually and a world-class church auditorium they call the World Dome that seats 8,500 people.
I believe those of you who are going to begin to declare the goodness of the Lord in the face of badness, there's going to be a wealth transference that is going to hit your house.
But of course, despite this, Creflo Dollar has been considered the embodiment of the prosperity gospel, claiming that wealth and material blessing are part of the rewards for our salvation. But so far, that statement seemed to have benefited one person, the pastor. In fact, on March 2015, Dollar had his face all over the news when he launched a global fundraising campaign for a $65 million Gulfstream G650 jet. According to him, the project G650 was in a bid to replace the church's 30-year-old Gulfstream jet is in a terrible shape and needs to be replaced. But when you think about it, how do you explain a pastor asking his congregants to donate $300 each to buy a project jet that he alone would ride? Even the blind could see that Creflo Dollar Ministries was solidly built around money and prosperity. Prosperity that never seems to go round. Now, another shocking revelation broke out from his ministry. After decades of preaching that tithing was mandatory for salvation, Dollar suddenly comes clean with a change of heart. He stood before his congregation and admitted his tithing teachings were wrong.
Which has made the difference. I won't apologize, because if it wasn't for me going down that route, I would have never ended up where I am right now.
Just like that, decades of doctrine thrown out the window. But even this sudden repentance wasn't without questions. Was this really a genuine understanding that his doctrine was wrong, or a mere surrender after legal pressure, theological criticism, and media exposure reached a breaking point? Critics like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had been calling him out for years, accusing him of profiting off the poor through prosperity gospel manipulation. Dollar had built his fame on a lie, and when the walls started closing in, he simply rewrote the script. But Dollar's story is just the beginning of a much darker pattern. Number 1. Biodun Fatoyinbo. Finally, let's talk about Pastor Biodun Fatoyinbo, founder of the Commonwealth of Zion Assembly, COZA. He's exactly what happens when a preacher chooses to be an Instagram influencer over the pulpit. Fatoyinbo's sitting on a gold mine, $5 million from his churches, and this music label he owns called Gratitude. But honestly, his car collection tells you everything you need to know about his priorities. 2 Rolls Royces, a Bentley Bentayga, and a Porsche 911. Over $1 million just parked in his garage. Aside from his desire for material things, Pastor Biodun has over 20,000 people showing up to his churches across Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and even Dubai, plus another 40,000 watching online. Now that's influence. But on the flip side, he's a typical prosperity preacher, emphasizing the material side of Christianity rather than the spiritual. Well, what more can you expect from a preacher who glides to church in a Rolls Royce? But 2019 took a different turn for him. Timi Dakolo's wife, Busola Dakolo, came forward accusing Fatoyinbo of rape when she was young. After heated protests from angry Nigerians, he had to step down briefly from being the senior pastor of COZA. That alone stamped an indelible stain on his name. He has also been dragged online by Nigerian celebrities like Shales and Tiwa Salvage and faced strong allegations from former choir leaders saying he owed them salaries while he's out here buying luxury cars. There is a lot more to his scandal stories, which only show just how much the pulpit has been corrupted by men whose only concern is building an empire out of the sweat of their congregation. These pastors we've covered are all part of the same twisted pattern, taking the gospel and turning it into get-rich-quick schemes. The real tragedy here isn't just their lies. It's how many people still believe them till today. Which pastor shocked you the most? And what other prosperity preachers deserve exposure? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to check out our next video revealing even more shocking scandals from preachers you never expected.